Good morning. This is our second video of the semester. We're talking about current problems facing the United States, and, well, we have to talk about the coronavirus. Okay, we've already talked about globalism, populism, and that put a large picture on things. Now we have to talk about the coronavirus. The reason I'm talking to you on the camera is simply because of the coronavirus. So, we know it's a real thing. And it has an effect, and it just didn't just affect us here in the United States. It is a worldwide phenomenon. I look at pictures of people in Africa. There was a coup in Mali yesterday, and there are some of the coup plotters, members of the military, wearing masks just like we do here in the United States. So this is something that affects us all. Okay? What happened is very simple. It appears that in China, in the city of Wuhan, a virus that probably is found in bats somehow got into human beings and infected human beings. And those humans who caught it then infected other human beings and affected other human beings, and so on and so on. And the virus is now found in every continent in the world with the exception of Antarctica. Okay? It seems to have started in a wet market in Wuhan, China. And a wet market is simply a market where you can go and you can get live fish because they're in water, that's why it's called wet, or you can get live animals. And then what you do with those is you choose them, you select them, and then either they're killed right there or you take them home and kill them and eat them. Okay? And somehow this virus slipped from an animal, a bat, into human beings and then spread. And this happened sometime last year, possibly in late summer, early fall. We just aren't sure. But the United States, our medical intelligence units knew it before Thanksgiving. They knew something was going on. And there's some evidence that the Chinese knew about it, possibly around Labor Day, so early September or late August. But what happened is that people caught this respiratory illness and started going to the hospitals. The local Chinese officials did not let people outside of their region know about it. They didn't call up Beijing and say, hey, we have this disease here. They didn't call up the World Health Organization and said, hey, we have this contagious disease. Instead, they tried to contain it, and as a consequence, they didn't contain it, and the disease spread. And we aren't sure how quickly it has spread to other countries. Looking back and checking some autopsies, we know that it arrived in the United States by early 2020. And not just in the United States, but it seemed to have spread to to Europe, and it seemed to have spread to South Asia as well. Okay, so that is what is taking place in the large sense. We know that the disease is a respiratory disease. It's spread through our breathing, our talking, our singing, our yelling. It's also spread through our nose. And in fact, there seems to be higher concentrations of the virus in our nose than in our mouth. But we use our mouth for talking, which is then better able to spread the disease. Okay? Now, when it came to the United States, President Trump ordered that there be no people from China who were Chinese coming to the United States after January 30th. And then in March, he stopped the delivery or the transport of Europeans to the United States. But if there were Americans over in China, if there were Americans over in Europe, they could still come here. And what happened is that they brought the disease. So by March, it was very much here. In fact, the first deaths that occurred in the United States probably occurred in late January in Washington state. So the disease is here. Everybody said, oh my God, what do we do about it? Middle of March, President orders, well, more correctly, he declares a national emergency, national medical emergency, and recommends that governors in all 50 states shut down their states. And that is what happened. That's why middle of spring break, middle of March, McMurray University shut down. Wherever you were in school at the time, you shut down probably around the same time. And it's because the governors of the states says, we've got a problem, we've got to shut down. So everybody shut down. Despite that shutdown, the disease, the number of cases of the disease increased dramatically in Europe, I'm sorry, in New York and in the West Coast, especially Washington and California. And so while we shut down, they were dealing with tremendous increases, such that in New York, they ran out of hospital beds and they were putting people in tents. There simply wasn't space for all the people who died. This is a disease that really affects people with pre-existing medical conditions like obesity, cancer, heart issues, lung issues, and it can be devastating for those people. But it's also a disease where probably up to 40% of the people who have it don't know that they have it, don't have any symptoms, are called asymptomatic, and yet those people with no symptoms can pass it on. So, because it's highly contagious, and because people who are passing it on don't have symptoms, it was the decision of the public health officials and the political leaders that we shut down. So that's what we did. Well, right after we shut down, the president said we need to get going again. He wanted us to be going by Easter in April. And it didn't quite work that way, but there was pressure on the president, and the pressure was giving pressure as well. And there was pressure on the governors to get everybody going again. So while the cases increased in New York, they seem to have reached a peak and then started a gradual decline. In most of the rest of the country, cases only gradually went up. And then our governors ordered us to get back to work. And so they gradually started opening the state. In May, around Memorial Day, early June, those number of cases, everybody, there was more freedom, we could move around more. People started going back to work, they started going shopping more. And what happened is the number of cases started to go up. Here in Texas, cases peaked in June and July. More than 10,000 Texans have now died of the disease. But starting in the middle of July, the number of cases seem to have declined, and they're on a downhill slope. So our governor said, we need to get back to school. And so that's why we have this, you're in school, but you still have to do things online. Okay? So we're not back to normal yet. Based on what we've seen, most public health people are saying that a couple weeks after we start to gather again with school, we're going to start seeing an increase in cases of the disease. And then the question is, how do we respond to that? Do we shut down again or not? Okay. President Trump is being judged on his leadership in the pandemic. Most Americans don't think that he has done a very good job. To me, the most valid complaints about the president regarding the pandemic are the inconsistency with which he is set to do things. We close down, then we have to open up, even though the number of cases seems to be increasing. And the fact that his administration, the public health people in his administration, are saying one thing and he is saying another. More than 100 times he said this disease will just disappear. It hasn't. His public health people are saying we need to shut down again. And he's saying, no, we won't. Public health people originally said we don't need masks. Then they said, when they've got more scientific evidence, we do need masks. And the president poo-pooed masks. And all of that is figuring in people's calculations as they think about who they're going to vote for come the November election. Okay? Now, one of the things we need to know, the consequence of shutting down has been dire. Okay? 1 out of 4 Americans were laid off temporarily or permanently, lost their job because of this. That works out by about 35 million Americans. The unemployment rate is currently about 10%. The people who are facing evictions because they can't afford to stay is increasing greatly. U.S. government provided help. That help expired in August. So as we move into September and beyond, we'll see how many new homeless people there are. So the economic consequences and its effect on people's lives has been devastating. There's also been an increase in the number of people who have committed domestic violence, and that's because people have been stuck in their own homes, and so that has been an issue as well. So economically, from this coronavirus, the economic situation is the worst it's been since the Great Depression in the 1930s. So 90 years since it's been as bad as it is now. I just hope it doesn't last as long as the Great Depression did, which went from 1929 to 1940. And of course, the other thing we have to mention is a tremendous loss of life. 175,000 Americans have died from this coronavirus. It's the 3rd leading cause of death in the United States this year, and we've only been dealing with it for 6 months. It's the 3rd leading cause of death. A year ago, almost nobody ever heard of the coronavirus. Now it's the #1 topic on people's minds. Okay, so that's the coronavirus. It is affecting us politically, it's affecting us economically, it's affecting how we live our lives. So with that, we'll stop right there till we get back for the next topic.